the most horrifying war crimes documented in ancient history. Outside the reinforced observation windows, the desolate surface of Zainara 7 stretched for hundreds of kilometers, a barren world scarred by ancient wars that no human had witnessed, until now. Dr. Mara Elen, a historian and xenologist, walked slowly, her boots tapping against the polished floor. Her eyes were fixed on the glowing console in front of her, but her mind wandered to the mission that had brought her here. Humanity had come a long way since leaving Earth. Millions of light-years away from the cradle of humankind, they now explored the galaxy in search of knowledge, allies, and sometimes danger. But Zainara 7 was different. The planet was a tomb. Its skies were thick with ash, and its oceans had long since dried. Scattered across the surface were enormous ruins, monuments to a civilization that had perished in the fire of its own making. The Valyrians, as Mara's team had learned, were one of the most advanced species in the galaxy, and one of the most brutal. Doctor. Elen, said Lieutenant Kale, stepping up beside her. The archive is stable, but the outer sectors are showing unusual energy readings. Could be traps. Mara glanced at him. Traps, Kale nodded, his face grim. The Valyrians were thorough. They didn't just record their history, they recorded their victories and their experiments in war. It's possible they left safeguards to protect their secrets. Mara took a deep breath. The idea made her uneasy. She had spent her life studying the human past, digging into the darkest corners of history, wars, conquests, betrayals, but nothing could have prepared her for the Valyrians. Their war crimes were not just acts of cruelty, they were deliberate experiments in fear, manipulation, and destruction. Then we proceed carefully, Mara said, her voice steady despite the tension. Knowledge is our goal, not destruction. The team entered the central chamber, a massive hall carved from black stone that shimmered under the soft lights of the Aetheris, portable energy shields. At the center of the hall floated a cylindrical structure, pulsating with faint blue light. This, Mara knew, was the archive, a living memory of a civilization's darkest moments. She could almost feel the weight of the information it contained, pressing against her mind even before she touched it. As she approached, holographic panels flickered to life, projecting scenes of the Valyrian past. Mara took a step closer. The first images were of cities, proud and shining, before war had touched them. Then came the armies, thousands of armored Valyrians, moving with precision that made the humans' military formations look clumsy. But it wasn't the armies that drew her attention, it was what they carried. Weapons unlike anything humanity had seen, devices capable of reshaping landscapes, controlling minds, and extinguishing life in unimaginable ways. Mara shivered, realizing that these were not only tools of war, they were instruments of horror. Yet the Valyrians had documented everything meticulously. Every action, every choice, every result was recorded, almost as if they were proud of their atrocities. Lieutenant Kale broke the silence. How could a species be so calculated in destruction? Mara did not answer immediately. She had asked herself that question countless times before. Humanity's history was dark enough, filled with wars, conquests, and crimes against its own kind. But the Valyrians had taken it to a scale that almost seemed unimaginable. Yet somehow Mara felt a strange sense of connection. Perhaps it was because, in studying the archive, she could see the same patterns repeated: greed, fear, ambition. Those were not alien traits. They were human traits, too. The first dataset Mara accessed was titled The Conquest of Lorinth. She activated it, and a holographic map of a city appeared, overlaid with timelines, troop movements, and casualty reports. Her stomach twisted. It read like a strategy game, but the numbers were real lives, millions extinguished, entire cultures erased. The Valyrians did not only conquer, they experimented with suffering, measuring the impact of fear, starvation, and despair. "This is horrifying," Kale whispered. And they've preserved it all like a trophy. Mara nodded, her eyes scanning the holograms. She noticed something strange, a pattern in the recordings. The Valyrians had not only documented their victims, they had documented themselves. Their pride, their rituals, their beliefs, it was all there. And yet, despite their brutality, there was an intelligence in the way they recorded history. They were not chaotic killers, they were thinkers, planners, scientists of war. It's not just horror, Mara said slowly. It's a warning, Cale frowned. A warning to whom? To us, Mara said, her voice barely audible. History repeats itself if we ignore it. If we don't learn from the Valyrians, we might one day become like them or someone worse. That's why we're here. To understand, to remember, and to make sure humanity does not fall into the same trap. The team continued exploring the archive, moving from one chamber to another. Each room revealed more horrors, more evidence of calculated cruelty. Mara struggled to keep her mind focused. Every scene tugged at her emotions. Images of families torn apart, cities burned, experiments on entire populations. But she forced herself to study, to take notes, to catalog the lessons hidden in the darkness. Hours passed, though it felt like days. Finally, Mara paused at a chamber labeled the psychological campaigns. Inside, the holograms displayed alien citizens being manipulated with terrifying efficiency, messages broadcast across the planet, propaganda that shaped thoughts and behaviors, fear used as a weapon more effective than any laser or bomb. Mara felt a chill run down her spine. They weren't just killers, she murmured. They were masters of the mind. Cale's voice was quiet. And we thought humans were clever. Mara forced a small smile, but it was brittle. The parallels between human history and Valyrian history were striking. Ancient Earth had its own records of mass violence, and humanity had survived. But surviving was not the same as learning. Mara hoped that humanity's intelligence, empathy, and moral reasoning could help them use this knowledge responsibly. As the sun of Zainara 7 began to set beyond the observation windows, painting the barren landscape in hues of red and gold, Mara felt a strange sense of determination. The archive was more than a record of war. It was a mirror. It reflected the darkest potentials of any civilization, including their own. Humanity had the chance to be different, to rise above cruelty, and to show that intelligence and empathy could triumph where brute force failed. We need to finish documenting everything, Mara said, her voice firm. Every strategy, every atrocity, every lesson. If humanity is to survive the galaxy, we must remember these mistakes and never repeat them. Cale nodded, and the team returned to their work. Outside, the winds of Zainara 7 whispered through ruined towers and shattered monuments, as if the planet itself were reminding them of the cost of ambition without conscience. Mara knew that part one of their mission was over, but the journey was just beginning. The echoes from the past would guide humanity's future, if only they had the courage to listen. By the time the crew left the chamber, the first stars of the night sky appeared over the alien horizon. Mara lingered for a moment, looking out at the vast darkness. The universe was full of danger, full of species capable of unimaginable cruelty, but it was also full of potential. Humanity could either succumb to the darkness or rise as a light. And Mara Alen intended to make sure they rose. The Aetheris hovered silently above the jagged surface of Zainara 7. Its engines emitted a low hum, vibrating through the steel floors and metal walls. Inside, the air was tense. The crew had spent the past day exploring the Valyrian archive, uncovering horrors that seemed almost impossible to imagine. Yet the true challenge had only just begun. Dr. Mara Elen stood before a large, circular viewing screen in the ship's command center. Holographic projections of the planet's ruins rotated slowly in the air, highlighting the structures that had once housed the Valyrian population. Mara studied the patterns carefully. "There's something odd," she muttered. Lieutenant Kale, who had been scanning the same data, raised an eyebrow. Odd, he asked. We've seen ruins, we've seen records. What else is there? Mara pointed at the projections. Look at the way the archives are distributed. The outer sectors of the city, the ones farthest from the central tower, are shielded, not just physically but energetically. The Valyrians didn't just want to record history, they wanted to protect it from anyone like us. Kale frowned. You mean traps? Possibly, Mara replied. Or safeguards. The Valyrians were intelligent. They may have created systems to prevent outsiders from misusing their knowledge. We need to proceed carefully. The team prepared to descend to the outer sectors. The planet's surface was rough and uneven, covered with layers of ash and twisted metal. Mara led the way, her portable scanner lighting the path ahead. Each step seemed heavier than the last. Zynara 7 was more than a barren world. It was a graveyard of knowledge and ambition. As they walked, Mara's mind wandered to what they had already discovered. The Valyrians had committed atrocities unlike any other species in recorded history. Entire cities had been erased, not out of necessity but as experiments to test fear, obedience, and the limits of survival. Yet the records also revealed intelligence and foresight. They had anticipated resistance, rebellion, even curiosity. Every action had been documented, analyzed, and stored. It's like they were trying to teach someone, Mara said aloud. Kale looked at her. Teach? Who would want to learn this? He asked. Mara shook her head. Not just anyone. But maybe someone who wants to understand or prevent such things from happening again. The outer sectors were darker, the ruins larger and more foreboding. Shadows stretched like claws across the ground, and the wind carried a strange metallic scent. Mara activated a scanner which began to hum and flicker. The readings were unusual, fluctuating in patterns she had never seen before. Energy spikes, Kale said, his voice low. Could be the safeguards you mentioned. Mara frowned. Or remnants of Valyrian technology still active after millennia. Either way, we proceed carefully. No sudden movements, no mistakes. They reached a massive structure at the edge of a ruined city, partially buried in ash. It was a library or perhaps a laboratory, its entrance sealed by a strange energy field. Mara studied the field with her scanner. It's designed to respond to presence, she said. If we trigger it, we could lose access to the archive entirely, or worse. Kale checked his gear. So how do we get in? Mara smiled faintly. We use the one thing the Valyrians could never predict, human intuition. They worked slowly, carefully tracing patterns in the energy field and matching them with environmental cues. Hours passed. Finally, the field flickered and then dissolved, leaving the entrance open. Mara felt a surge of relief. They had succeeded where brute force would have failed. Inside, the laboratory was vast and dark, filled with towering shelves of crystalline storage units. Holographic panels floated above them, displaying streams of data. The air smelled faintly of ozone, a reminder that the technology was ancient yet still alive. Mara approached a panel and activated it. A flood of images appeared. Cities burned, experiments conducted on entire populations, psychological manipulations, and military campaigns. The Valyrians had not only documented their enemies, they had recorded themselves, pride, rituals, and ambitions included. Kale watched silently, his face pale. How could a species be so cruel and calculated at the same time? Mara didn't answer immediately. She had asked herself that question countless times. The Valyrians were terrifying in their efficiency, but their records revealed one thing humans had as well: the capacity to understand, to learn, to change. That was the difference. Humanity could see the darkness and still choose a different path. The team spent hours analyzing the data. They discovered strategies that manipulated entire populations, propaganda systems that shaped thoughts, and biological devices designed to control behavior. The horror of it was overwhelming, yet Mara pressed on. She knew that understanding the Valyrians' methods was crucial, not to emulate them, but to ensure humanity would never fall into the same patterns. As night fell over Zynara 7, the team gathered in the central chamber of the laboratory. The air was heavy, filled with the weight of countless lives lost and knowledge recorded. Mara felt a strange sense of responsibility. "We are witnessing the consequences of unchecked ambition and cruelty," she said softly. The Valyrians' intelligence was unmatched, but so was their disregard for life. We must remember this, not just as historians, but as humans who want to survive and thrive in the galaxy. Kale nodded, but his expression was troubled. "And if someone else finds this? Someone who doesn't care about morality?" "That's why we're here," Mara replied. "We study, we record, we protect. Knowledge alone is dangerous if not guided by ethics and empathy." Suddenly, the scanner beeped. The energy readings outside were rising rapidly. Mara and Kale exchanged worried glances. "Something's coming," Kale said. Mara activated the external sensors. A group of unknown ships had appeared on the horizon, approaching Zynara 7 at high speed. Mara's stomach tightened. Humanity was not the only species aware of the Valyrian archive. "They're trying to get to the records," Mara said. "We have to act fast." The crew quickly prepared defensive measures, reinforcing the energy shields and activating security protocols. Mara accessed the archive, downloading critical data to portable storage units. Each moment was tense, filled with the possibility of confrontation. The alien ships landed nearby, and Mara could see figures moving with precision and intent. These were not explorers, they were mercenaries, interested only in power. Mara realized that the Valyrians' legacy was not just knowledge, it was a test. Humanity's ability to protect, to act responsibly, and to use intelligence over brute force would determine the outcome. Mara turned to her team. "Remember what we've learned. The Valyrians believed in fear and control. We believe in strategy, empathy, and intelligence. That is our advantage. Use it." The first wave of mercenaries entered the ruins, scanning for the archive. Mara and her team moved carefully, using the labyrinthine corridors to their advantage. They had no intention of fighting with the same brutality they had witnessed in the Valyrian records. Instead, they used distractions, traps, and clever maneuvers to slow the invaders. Hours passed in tense silence, broken only by occasional alerts and whispers. Mara felt exhaustion creeping in, but she forced herself to stay focused. Every step was a lesson in human ingenuity, every decision a demonstration of their moral and intellectual strength. Finally, the invaders retreated, realizing they could not penetrate the defenses. Mara allowed herself a small sigh of relief. They had survived, not by matching the Valyrians' cruelty, but by using the very traits that made humanity unique. As the crew regrouped, Mara reflected on what they had learned. The Valyrians had left behind horrors that were almost unimaginable, yet their records also revealed a crucial truth. Intelligence without empathy leads to destruction. Humanity had survived because they chose differently. They had used strategy, creativity, and moral reasoning to overcome a threat that could have destroyed them. "We're not just explorers," Mara said quietly. "We're guardians of knowledge. And this knowledge, it will guide us if we are wise enough to use it." The stars of Zynara 7 shone faintly above, distant yet unwavering. Mara looked at them and felt a sense of hope. Humanity had faced the shadow of the Valyrians and emerged stronger, not through fear or domination, but through courage, intelligence, and conscience. The mission was far from over. The galaxy was full of challenges, full of species capable of unimaginable cruelty. But Mara knew this. Humanity had the potential to rise above, to learn from the past, and to shine as a beacon in the darkness. And Mara was determined to see that potential realized. The Aetheris floated silently above the barren plains of Zynara 7, its hull glowing faintly in the pale light of the distant sun. Inside, the crew moved with renewed purpose. They had survived the initial threat from the mercenaries, secured portions of the Valyrian archive, and understood something crucial. Knowledge alone was not enough. Humanity had to act wisely. Dr. Mara Elen stood at the central command console, reviewing the downloaded data. The Valyrians had left behind layers of strategies, not only for warfare but also for manipulating entire populations. It was terrifying to think that a species could engineer fear and obedience with such precision. But Mara reminded herself that the same intelligence could be used for good. "We need to convert this knowledge into something we can use," Mara said, her voice firm. "Not as a weapon, but as a tool to protect ourselves and others." Lieutenant Kale, leaning against the console, frowned. "And how do we do that without becoming like them?" Mara met his gaze. "By remembering who we are. Humans have empathy, conscience, and creativity. That is our advantage. We won't copy the Valyrians. We'll learn from them." The team began analyzing the archives, breaking down complex Valyrian systems into understandable modules. They discovered methods for detecting threats, predicting enemy movements, and managing resources during crises. Mara called it strategic foresight. Unlike the Valyrians, they planned to use it to save lives, not destroy them. Days passed as the crew worked tirelessly. The ruins around them seemed to echo with the ghost of the Valyrians' past, but Mara felt something else as well, a sense of human potential. Humanity had survived countless wars and disasters on Earth. Yet here, in the heart of a fallen alien civilization, they were learning to rise above darkness on a galactic scale. One evening, as the twin moons of Zainara 7 rose in the sky, Mara gathered the team in the main chamber. "We've done more than study history," she said. "We've discovered principles that can guide humanity's future, but now we must test them. The galaxy will not wait for us to be ready." Her words were prophetic. Outside the ship's shields, scanners detected movement. Another fleet of alien vessels approached, larger and more organized than before. Mara's heart quickened, but she steadied herself. Humanity had survived the first challenge, but this was different. The invaders were clearly aware of the archive's value and were determined to claim it. "Prepare defenses," Mara ordered. "But remember, we fight smarter, not harder. We will use strategy, not brutality." The crew mobilized. Using the Valyrian records, they predicted the aliens' likely approach paths, potential ambush points, and resource weak spots. They set up energy barriers, deployable decoys, and automated drones programmed to protect the ship and the archive. Every measure was calculated, every action deliberate. When the alien ships landed on the surface, Mara observed from the control deck. The invaders moved with precision, scanning for the archive, but the human team had anticipated every step. Drones swarmed to create distractions. Energy barriers blocked key paths, and traps, designed to incapacitate rather than kill, forced the aliens to retreat repeatedly. Kale watched in awe. "They're fast, but they're falling right into our predictions." Mara smiled faintly. "Intelligence is our greatest weapon. The Valyrians had power, but we have something stronger, conscience guiding strategy." The battle continued for hours. Mara and her team moved between consoles, coordinating the defense and adjusting strategies in real time. The aliens adapted quickly, but the humans adapted faster. Every time the invaders tried to outsmart them, Mara and her team had already anticipated the move. In a tense moment, one alien squad cornered a storage unit containing crucial archive data. Mara calculated the probability of success in milliseconds. "Deploy the decoy drones now," she ordered. The drones created a false energy signature, leading the aliens away from the real archive. The team held their breath as the aliens discovered the trick. For a moment, it seemed they might retaliate, but the humans had covered all exits. The aliens, realizing the futility, withdrew. Silence returned to Zynara 7, broken only by the hum of the Aether's engines. Mara allowed herself a deep breath. They had won not by matching cruelty with cruelty, but by using intelligence, strategy, and restraint. Humanity had proven that they could rise above the darkness that had consumed the Valyrians. Kale approached Mara. That was incredible. We didn't just survive, we outsmarted them. How did we manage it? Mara looked at the ruins outside, faintly illuminated by the moons. Because we have something they never had: empathy, conscience, the ability to make choices that preserve life, not destroy it. That is what makes humanity human. The team worked through the night, ensuring that the remaining data was secure and that no traces of their activities could be exploited. They also began developing a system to share the Valyrian lessons safely with other human colonies, guidelines for strategy, ethics, and moral reasoning that could help prevent future conflicts. In the quiet moments between preparations, Mara reflected on the significance of their work. The Valyrians had been a warning, a mirror showing what a species could become if intelligence was separated from morality. Humanity had the opportunity to choose differently. Every action they took, every decision guided by conscience, was proof that they could rise above cruelty and chaos. By dawn, the skies of Zynara 7 were calm once more. Mara walked outside, feeling the weight of the planet beneath her boots. The ruins, the ash, and the ghostly remnants of the Valyrians reminded her of one truth: knowledge alone was dangerous, but knowledge guided by wisdom could become a shield. "We've done well," Kale said, joining her. "But this is only the beginning, isn't it?" Mara nodded. "Yes. The galaxy is full of challenges, and not all of them will respect morality or intelligence. But we now have a foundation. Humanity can act with strategy and conscience, even in the darkest situations. That is our legacy." As they prepared to leave Zynara 7, Mara sent a secure transmission to human colonies across nearby systems. The message was simple. The Valyrian archive contained dangers, yes, but also lessons. Humanity had the chance to rise above cruelty, to use intelligence for protection rather than destruction. "We are not just survivors," Mara said, standing in the command deck as the Aether's ascended. "We are guardians, guardians of knowledge, of morality, and of the future." The stars stretched endlessly ahead, a reminder of both risk and opportunity. Mara felt a sense of determination stronger than ever. Humanity had faced the shadow of a species that had fallen into darkness and had emerged wiser. The journey ahead would not be easy, but for the first time, Mara truly believed that humans could navigate the galaxy without losing themselves to fear, ambition, or cruelty. And as the Aether's left Zynara 7 behind, carrying the lessons of the Valyrians into the wider galaxy, Mara knew one thing: humanity's response to the shadows of the past would define their future. They had learned, they had adapted, and they had chosen a different path. The challenge of survival had become a challenge of morality and intellect, and humanity, for all its flaws, was ready. The Aether's sailed quietly through the blackness of space, distant stars glinting like tiny sparks on a vast canvas. "Doctor." Mara Elen stood on the observation deck, her gaze fixed on the horizon of the nearest human colony. Humanity had survived Zynara 7 and the first wave of alien mercenaries. Yet, Mara knew that surviving was only part of the journey. The greater challenge was learning from the past and applying it wisely. Inside the ship, the crew worked tirelessly. The Valyrian archive had been partially secured, its lessons extracted, organized, and translated into a form humans could understand. Mara had insisted that every bit of knowledge be paired with ethical guidelines, a moral compass to prevent misuse. They called it the Humanity Protocol. Lieutenant Kale approached her. "We've learned a lot," he said, his voice thoughtful. "But is it enough? What if someone else comes looking for the archive, or worse, misuses it?" Mara turned, meeting his gaze. That's why we don't just defend knowledge, we teach it. Knowledge without guidance is dangerous. But if we show how to use it responsibly, humanity can prevent mistakes others might repeat. The team began sending encoded transmissions to nearby colonies. Each message contained a portion of the Valyrian strategies, along with commentary explaining how humans could use intelligence and foresight without crossing moral boundaries. Mara knew this was a gamble. Sharing knowledge always carried risk. But hiding it entirely could allow others to stumble blindly into the same mistakes the Valyrians had made. Weeks passed as the transmission spread. Mara monitored responses, noting both curiosity and concern. Some colonies were cautious, fearing the power the information implied. Others embraced the lessons, eager to apply strategic thinking and ethical planning to their own defense systems. Humanity was learning to balance knowledge and conscience, a delicate act that the Valyrians had never mastered. One day, the ship's scanners detected an unknown vessel approaching. Mara's pulse quickened. Unlike previous encounters, this ship moved with precision and purpose. It was not mercenaries, it was a diplomatic envoy. The ship docked, and a delegation of alien representatives entered the Aetheris. Mara greeted them cautiously. "We come in peace," said one of the aliens, their voice formal. "We have observed your activities on Zainara 7 and the strategies you have employed. We seek understanding, not conflict." Mara studied them carefully. "Then you understand the importance of restraint," she said. "The Valyrians were intelligent, yes, but they lacked empathy. They created fear, not guidance. Humanity's approach is different. We intend to use knowledge responsibly." The aliens nodded, seemingly impressed. "Your methods are unique. Many species rely on brute force and domination. You rely on intelligence guided by conscience." "This is unusual," Mara smiled faintly. "It is our choice. Knowledge alone is not enough. How we use it defines us." The aliens requested access to portions of the archive. Mara agreed, but under strict conditions. They would receive lessons, ethical frameworks, and strategic guidance, but nothing that could be weaponized for mass destruction. Humanity was setting a precedent. Intelligence and morality could coexist, even in a universe that often valued power over principle. While the diplomatic exchange continued, Mara reflected on the broader implications. The Valyrian archives were more than historical records. They were a mirror, showing what happened when intelligence is divorced from empathy. Humanity had survived because they chose differently. And now they had the opportunity to guide not only themselves, but others toward a better path. Yet challenges remained. Despite their success, Mara knew the galaxy was vast and unpredictable. Not every encounter would be friendly. Not every civilization would respect morality over power. The real test of humanity's lessons would come when their principles were challenged by necessity, danger, or ambition. In preparation, Mara and her team began developing simulations based on the Valyrian strategies. These were not games of destruction. They were exercises in ethical decision-making, predicting outcomes and evaluating risks. Crew members worked in teams, applying logic, creativity, and empathy to solve complex scenarios. Each simulation reinforced one lesson. Intelligence must be paired with conscience, foresight must include ethics, and true strength comes from understanding, not domination. One evening, as Mara observed a particularly challenging simulation, she noticed something remarkable. The team was not only learning the Valyrian strategies, they were improving on them. Where the Valyrians had sought control, the humans sought protection. Where the Valyrians had instilled fear, the humans promoted understanding. Humanity's response was evolving, guided by lessons written in blood but transformed by conscience. The quiet of space was broken by an alert. Mara's console displayed incoming communications from a nearby human colony under threat from a hostile alien faction. Mara realized the true test had arrived. The Valyrian strategies, now adapted with ethical safeguards, could be applied in real life. Prepare a tactical response, Mara ordered. We will assist them using the principles we've learned. Intelligence and empathy together, not fear or violence. The team coordinated rapidly. Using predictive simulations, they calculated enemy movements, resource allocations, and potential weaknesses. They deployed non-lethal defenses to protect civilians, created diversions to slow the enemy, and used advanced communication networks to guide the colony safely out of danger. Every action was deliberate, every decision guided by both strategy and morality. Hours later, the colony reported success. Their attackers had retreated, confused and unable to counter the coordinated human response. Mara allowed herself a moment of quiet satisfaction. Humanity had applied Valyrian lessons without succumbing to the same darkness. They had protected life, preserved autonomy, and demonstrated a moral superiority that no weapon could achieve. Cale approached her, exhaustion clear on his face. We didn't just win. We showed that intelligence with conscience is more powerful than brute force. Mara nodded. And that is what the Valyrians never understood. Knowledge alone is not enough. True strength lies in knowing how to use it wisely. The next days were spent documenting the operation. Mara insisted that every decision, every maneuver, and every ethical consideration be recorded. This would become a guide for future generations, a manual for using intelligence and strategy without losing humanity. As the Aetheris continued its journey, Mara reflected on the lessons written in blood by the Valyrians and now rewritten in hope by humans. History was filled with cruelty, but humanity had proven that history could be a teacher, not a chain. By applying wisdom, empathy, and strategic thought, they could navigate the galaxy without repeating the mistakes of the past. The stars stretched endlessly ahead, each one a reminder of both danger and opportunity. Mara felt a deep sense of purpose. Humanity had faced the shadow of the Valyrians and emerged stronger, not through fear or domination, but through intelligence guided by conscience. This is only the beginning, Mara said quietly, speaking to herself as much as to the crew. The galaxy is vast and the challenges will continue, but we now know that knowledge, ethics, and courage together can light the path forward. The Aetheris sailed on, carrying humanity's legacy across the stars. Lessons written in blood had been transformed into lessons of hope, and Mara Elen knew that the future depended not on avoiding conflict, but on meeting it with intelligence, morality, and the unwavering belief that humanity could rise above the darkness. Even as new dangers awaited in the uncharted reaches of space, humanity had proven one essential truth. Intelligence without morality was dangerous, but morality guided by intelligence was unstoppable. And in the vast, cold universe, that was a light worth carrying. The galaxy was vast and silent, but the Aetheris carried a promise across its endless expanse. Humanity had survived Zynara 7, faced hostile forces, and learned from the Valyrians, a species whose intelligence had been unmatched but whose cruelty had been their downfall. Doctor. Mara Elen stood on the observation deck, staring at the distant stars, each one a beacon of possibility. "This is it," she said quietly, almost to herself. "Our moment to shape the future." Lieutenant Cale joined her, holding a console filled with updates from human colonies. "The transmissions are spreading," he said. "Colonies are responding. They're not just reading the lessons, they're applying them." Mara nodded, feeling a surge of pride. Humanity had transformed knowledge into wisdom. They had taken the Valyrians' record of horrors and turned it into a guide for survival, strategy, and morality. Across the galaxy, colonies were implementing the Humanity Protocol. Defense systems were redesigned, communication networks strengthened, and leadership structures adapted to emphasize intelligence, foresight, and ethical decision-making. Mara's vision of humans acting not just with power, but with conscience was coming true. Yet even with these successes, challenges remained. Mara knew that some civilizations would not respect morality. Some would seek power over principle, force over reason. But humanity had demonstrated a vital truth. Intelligence guided by conscience could overcome brute strength. An alert flashed on Mara's console. A new vessel approached, not hostile but massive and unfamiliar. Mara activated the communication system. The holographic figure of an alien ambassador appeared, their features sharp and commanding. "Dr. Alen," the alien spoke, "we have monitored your activities. Humanity has demonstrated an unusual combination of strategic intelligence and moral reasoning. We seek to learn, to understand, and perhaps to join forces." Mara studied the figure. "We share knowledge and strategies," she replied, "but only in ways that respect life and conscience. Humanity's strength is not in domination. It is in understanding, foresight, and ethical action." The alien nodded. "We wish to cooperate. Together, perhaps we can prevent conflicts before they escalate. We have seen what intelligence without empathy can lead to." Mara felt a quiet satisfaction. This was more than survival. Humanity was becoming a guide, a model of how a species could use knowledge responsibly. They were proving that morality and intelligence could coexist and even thrive across the stars. Back on the Aetheris, Mara gathered her team for a meeting. "We have reached a milestone," she said. "We have not just survived the darkness of Zynara 7 or the attacks from hostile forces. We have applied the lessons of the Valyrians to create a better future. But we must continue. The galaxy is full of unknowns. Our work is only beginning." The crew listened intently, their expressions a mix of pride and determination. They had witnessed horrors, adapted to threats, and demonstrated that humanity could rise above cruelty and chaos. Now, they were part of a movement that would shape not just human colonies, but the galaxy itself. Mara activated the archives one final time, reviewing the vast data the Valyrians had left behind. Cities destroyed, populations manipulated, wars fought with terrifying efficiency. All of it was a warning. Humanity had learned from these records, but more importantly, they had chosen a different path. Lieutenant Kale leaned over her shoulder. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if we had acted like them?" he asked. Mara shook her head. "I don't want to imagine that. We have the chance to be better. That is what defines us. Knowledge is only dangerous if we let it guide us toward cruelty. We have chosen differently. That is our legacy." The Aetheris traveled from system to system, delivering knowledge, guidance, and support. Colonies once isolated were now connected, sharing strategies, warnings, and ethical frameworks. Humanity's influence spread not through fear or conquest, but through intelligence, planning, and the conscious choice to preserve life. One day, as the ship approached a planet rich with resources but vulnerable to conflict, Mara received a communication from a colony leader. The message was simple but profound. "Your teaching saved us. Humanity has shown us that strength is not measured by destruction, but by the courage to act wisely and ethically. Thank you." Mara allowed herself a moment of reflection. Every challenge they had faced, the Valyrians' archives, hostile mercenaries, and the moral dilemmas of spreading knowledge, had led to this. Humanity had proven that intelligence guided by conscience was a force stronger than fear, cruelty, or domination. Yet Mara knew that vigilance was necessary. The galaxy was still unpredictable, and other species might not share humanity's principles. But she also knew that humanity now had a blueprint, a set of principles that could guide action even in the face of unimaginable challenges. She turned to Kale. "We are not just explorers anymore," she said. "We are guardians of a moral and intellectual legacy, and this legacy will continue long after we are gone." Kale nodded. "A legacy of light," he said softly. "Yes," Mara agreed. "A legacy of light in the darkness of the galaxy." The Aetheris continued its journey, delivering guidance and support to colonies across hundreds of systems. Humanity's influence grew, not through conquest but through wisdom. Mara watched as leaders applied the Humanity Protocol, making decisions that balanced intelligence with ethics, foresight with empathy. In one particularly challenging system, Mara witnessed an alien faction planning to invade a human colony. Using predictive simulations and ethical guidelines derived from the Valyrian records, humans coordinated a defense that protected civilians and deterred the attackers without unnecessary destruction. It was the ultimate proof that strategy and morality could coexist. Mara reflected on the journey from Zainara 7 to this moment. The horrors recorded by the Valyrians had been a dark mirror, showing what a species could become if intelligence was separated from conscience. Humanity had learned from it, adapted, and chosen a different path. The stars outside the Aetheris stretched endlessly, but Mara no longer felt fear. She felt hope, determination, and a sense of purpose that transcended the dangers of the galaxy. Humanity's actions had set a precedent. Intelligence paired with conscience was not just possible, it was powerful. As the Aetheris entered another star system, Mara sent a final transmission to every human colony within reach. Her message was simple. We have faced the darkness of the past and the threats of the present. We have learned that true strength comes not from fear or domination, but from intelligence guided by conscience. Humanity can rise above cruelty, protect life, and build a future worth living. Remember these lessons, apply them, be the guardians of this galaxy. Our legacy is in your hands. The transmission spread across hundreds of worlds, reaching leaders, scholars, and ordinary citizens alike. Mara watched the results in real time. Colonies adapting, leaders making careful, ethical decisions, humans connecting and cooperating in ways that had never been possible before. Kale joined her on the observation deck, watching the lights of distant colonies twinkle like stars in their own right. "Do you think we've done enough?" he asked. Mara smiled. "Enough, no, but we've done something important. We've shown that humanity can rise above the darkness, learn from the past, and act with both intelligence and conscience. That is more than survival, it is a legacy." As the Aetheris sailed further into the galaxy, Mara felt a deep sense of fulfillment. The journey had begun with the discovery of ancient horrors, but it had led to something far greater. Proof that humanity could choose differently, that knowledge could guide without destroying, and that a species could shine as a light in the vast darkness of space. The Valyrians had left behind lessons written in blood. Humanity had rewritten those lessons with hope, intelligence, and morality. The galaxy was no longer just a place of danger, it was a place of possibility. And humanity would continue to rise, not through fear, but through wisdom, empathy, and courage. Mara turned from the observation deck, her mind calm yet alert. The stars stretched endlessly ahead, and with them, the promise of a future defined not by cruelty, but by the choices that set humanity apart. The journey would never end, but one truth had been proven. Intelligence guided by conscience was unstoppable. Humanity's legacy was not in conquest or power. It was in light, in hope, and in the courage to act wisely in a universe that too often rewarded the opposite. And for the first time, Mara truly believed that the galaxy had seen the beginning of something extraordinary.